Finding male lube in wife's handbag, I replaced it with superglue for revenge. I used to think betrayal would kick down the front door, lipstick on a collar, a perfume I didn't buy, a late-night argument that woke the neighbors. Instead, it whispered to me from the bottom of my wife's handbag, an elegant silver tube, cool and expensive in my palm, the sort of thing our marriage never needed. When Sophie stepped out of the shower, humming the hook of a song she never finished, I was still holding it, and I knew my life was about to split cleanly in two. The years before that discovery, and everything after. If you're listening with a coffee cooling beside you and a long afternoon waiting to be filled, keep me company. Some stories won't sit still unless we tell them out loud. And if you want more tangled love and reckoning told plain, stick around. This one takes its time and pays off where it hurts. We lived, in a mid-rise building 2 blocks from Lake Michigan, where seagulls mistake wind for permission and the elevator smells like laundry and last night's fish. I turned 41 this spring and fixed things for a living. Hydraulic arms, misbehaving latches, the stubborn metal that forgets it was designed to cooperate. Sophie is 38, works in logistics, and knows how to make a calendar behave. She also knows how to make a problem hold still long enough to rename it. "This?" I said, the tube cool in my palm. She blinked once. "It's just skin stuff." "It's not," I said gently. "It's not for skin." To her credit, she didn't throw a tantrum. She tried humility instead, that soft focus voice people use when they want you to believe you're being unreasonable. "Ethan, please. My coworkers were joking about midlife spice," she murmured. "Someone gave it to me as a gag gift." If it was a joke, it was the kind that comes in a discreet box with overnight shipping. And then, without thinking, she did what people do when they lie. She reached for my wrist to reclaim the object, as if touch could edit fact. I stepped back. "I'd like your phone," I said. "Unlocked, right here at the table." She hesitated half a heartbeat, then handed it over. Open, like a person surrendering a passport. Sophie is careful. She hides things under names that don't belong to them. I don't know how long it took me to notice a folder labeled groceries inside an app that didn't sell food, or a chat thread pinned with a tiny lemon, or the contact saved as D. The threads were banal on the surface. Traffic's a nightmare. See you at the hotel. A photo of a wooden table with 2 cups of tea. A snapshot of a gray hallway carpet that could belong to any chain hotel on the shore. But then there was a line that made the kitchen feel smaller. Bring the silver. She had answered with a winking face I hadn't seen in years. I set the phone down and took a breath I didn't want. "Is D the trainer from upstairs?" I asked. The upstairs neighbor, Dylan, is 33 and built like a gym solved him. He runs boot camps on the roof when the weather behaves and says good morning to the world like he invented it. Sophie's throat worked before her voice found a shape. "It's not what you think," she said. "When a person says that, what they mean is, you're thinking too clearly." I didn't ask for a confession that night. I slept in the guest room, an ambitious phrase for a narrow space with a futon and a window that learned to be stubborn. In the morning, she made eggs with the fast care of someone who hopes competence is a virtue system. She talked about meetings. She kissed the air somewhere near my cheek. She left. I am not a man who shouts. I am a man who documents. Numbers reason with me even when nothing else does. At lunch, I walked past the gym lobby and caught the end of a laugh I knew too well. Dylan stood near the water cooler, with his hands tucked into the waistband of his track pants in the universal posture of a man who believes gravity is in a committed relationship with him. He nodded at me, neighborly, harmless, and I filed it under evidence no court can use. Back home, the building's mailroom smelled like cardboard and optimism. In my box was a padded envelope addressed to Sophie. I don't open other people's mail. I do sometimes consider what it costs us to pretend privacy always deserves our protection. I set the envelope on the kitchen counter and went for a walk. At the lake, the wind worked hard to convince the water to misbehave. I watched a gull drop a mussel and lose the race to a second gull who hadn't done the work. It felt like a parable, and I hated that. When I came back, Sophie stood at the counter, the padded envelope already torn. She had the tube in her hand again, shiny, innocent, obscene. She didn't look up. "We need to talk," she said. "Yes," I said. "It wasn't serious," she added, as if the scale of betrayal mattered more than its shape. "I felt—" She searched for the charitable adjective. "Stuck." The human heart keeps a cautious ledger. It understands metaphor, but sometimes metaphor needs help finding its outline. I won't tell you everything I thought about doing. Revenge is a toolbox with too many shiny wrenches. I will tell you that I chose a kind that would speak in the language Sophie understood best. Not violence, not chaos, consequence. Consequence you could feel with your whole skin. Consequence that would require a nurse and an intake form and an apologetic shrug from a stranger who had seen worse. That night, the building's elevator decided to pretend it was tired. I heard Dylan's laugh on the landing at 11:30, then Sophie's hush, like she was scolding a dog who didn't belong to us. I lay on the futon with my eyes open and listened for something I used to own, the sound of being chosen. It didn't arrive. The building went quiet. At 3 a.m., the quiet broke. An ambulance siren in the street, a door slamming, the frantic shuffle of feet that don't expect to be seen. I went to the window without turning on a light. They were not graceful. One paramedic carried a blanket and embarrassment. The other carried a toolbox with a latch I've repaired a dozen times in the shop. Sophie's hair was tied up like a question she couldn't solve. Dylan's face had the strained grin of a man trying to pretend emergency rooms are something he schedules. The paramedics didn't look at me looking at them. They never do. I will not tell you exactly how humiliation learns to adhere to the places it is invited. I will not give you a recipe, not even a hint of the proportions. This is not a manual. It is a map of a night where two people learned that ordinary objects refuse to be accomplices when they're asked the wrong question. Sophie did not come home that night. She texted at 7. "We're fine. Accident. Don't worry." I made coffee the way I did the day my father died, slowly, politely, as if grief had asked for it. By noon, the building had learned to whisper. A neighbor whose name I don't know used the word sticky in a voice that wanted to be cruel and settled for thrilled. Sophie returned late afternoon in sweatpants and a sweatshirt with the hospital's logo, which is the worst kind of merchandise. She went straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower like it owed her. When she came out, her face was the color of paper and her voice careful enough to pass inspection. "I had an allergic reaction," she said. "At work. Someone switched my lotion." "Work," I repeated, and didn't ask her to practice the lie again. There is a mercy in allowing a person to keep the kind of story that doesn't help them anymore. I cooked dinner because civilized habits can be armor. Sophie pushed a fork through rice and watched it learn to wander. "We can get past this," she said. "What is this?" I asked. "The mistake," she said. "The whole—" And then she stopped because even the vague hated being asked to do that much labor. We didn't sleep together that night or the night after. The silence between rooms acquired a personality, helpful, stubborn, unforgiving. I went to work and solved a problem with a latch that refused to let go when it should. The foreman clapped me on the shoulder without asking what had taught me patience. The building's gossip grew legs. Someone said the gym had closed early for a plumbing problem. Someone else said the upstairs apartment had a door frame scuff that looked like paramedic boot rubber. No one said Dylan's name out loud. That's the trouble with adored men. Towns learn to pronounce their denials better than their names. Sophie tried a different strategy, contrition with a schedule. She made dinner 3 nights in a row, all of them recipes that required time, as if labor could clean the ledger. She slipped a note onto my coffee mug. "I'm sorry. I'm clueless with you sometimes. Can we take a weekend and reset?" The words reset and room and suite appeared in her search history like polite thieves. I wanted to call my mother and ask her what she did the first time my father came home smelling like a party she wasn't invited to. But my mother is a woman who weaponized silence and wore victory like a quiet perfume, and I didn't want to earn a lecture I had already learned. In the middle of the week, a second delivery arrived, unmarked, unhelpful. The label might as well have said hope. The envelope tore open like a secret that had lost patience. Inside, something meant for soothing heat, for smoothing aftermaths. There are products that promise comfort and deliver pain if you ask them rudely enough. That evening, Sophie and her friend Mira went out for wine and sympathy. I stood in our kitchen with the tube on the counter and considered the line between righteousness and vandalism. Then I packed a small bag, tucked it into the trunk of my car, and drove to a motel with a view of the lake and a bedspread sewn from a pattern called Regret. I checked in under my middle name. I slept with the TV on to drown out anything my conscience wanted to narrate. In the morning, I took a walk along the water and watched a man teach his grandson how to skip stones. The boy threw the first one like a prayer and shouted when it bounced twice before surrendering. "See?" the man laughed. "Let the stone do most of the work." When I came home, Sophie met me at the door like a volunteer at a fundraiser. Smile, posture, scripted sincerity. "Are you leaving me?" she asked. "I haven't decided," I said. "Have you?" She flinched as if the word "you" had teeth. "I want to fix this." "You don't fix betrayal," I said. "You repair the room and apologize to the furniture." She didn't understand the metaphor. "That's all right. Not every apology needs to be bilingual." 2 days later, the building learned to memorize the siren schedule. Dylan moved more quietly. Sophie moved more carefully. She stopped wearing perfume. She started carrying a cardigan even when the day didn't deserve it. When she brushed past me in the hallway, the smell of hospital soap stuck around like a guest who knows better. You might think the humiliation would have ended things for both of them. You would underestimate how stubborn some habits are. They weren't reckless after that. They were cautious, which is worse. Caution allows your body to learn the choreography of lying without ever calling it dance. Claire would have told me to get out then, but Claire doesn't live in this story. What I had was a lake, a quiet car, and a memory of a younger version of myself who believed love was proof against ordinary ruin. Sophie's parents drove up from Indiana to negotiate with my patience. Elaine paints houses for a living and likes details that behave. Her husband Rick is the kind of man who shakes your hand and counts your fingers. They took us to lunch at a restaurant with linen napkins that tried not to know about the lake air in our hair. "We all make mistakes," Elaine said kindly, as if the plural would feel less personal. "What matters is who we want to be afterward." Rick looked at me over his iced tea. "And what matters is keeping what you've built. Money down, arrangements made, family flying in. It's not nothing." "It's not everything," I said, and the waiter arrived before I could explain what everything looked like now. Sophie went quiet the rest of the afternoon, a kind of quiet that has a hat on. She cleaned the apartment until it smelled like a product that promised lemons and delivered alcohol. She put the silver tube into the trash with the dignity of a ritual and took it back out like a person rescuing a ring from the sink. I watched her choose and then choose again. I won't list every small revenge I considered. Some of them involved printers and HR and hotel managers with integrity. Some of them involved neighbors with long memories. In the end, what I wanted was something no one else could auction or collect. a kind of mercy that still told the truth. The building has a community board by the mailboxes where people list a sofa, a cat that has temporarily joined a different family, a call for a chess partner who doesn't cheat. I wrote a note on a torn envelope and thumbtacked it at eye level. If you hear a siren tonight, say a prayer for the ones who forgot what their bodies mean. That was meaner than I like to be. I left it up exactly one evening and took it down before the super had to pretend he hadn't seen it. The call from the hospital arrived on a Thursday. Not a siren this time, but a voice that wanted to confirm insurance. Sophie had given my number as the responsible party. I went because responsible is a word you don't abandon without replacing it with something honest. At the admissions desk, the woman with the patient eyes looked up and recognized the kind of husband I was wearing. "She's in room 214, she said, and didn't add anything else. Sophie cried before I could decide who I wanted to be. "I'm so ashamed," she whispered, and for the first time the word fit. She told me the story the hospital would understand, a reaction to a product that didn't love her back. She didn't tell me names. I didn't ask. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, and felt the sentence enter the room and start furniture shopping. She nodded, tears slipping into her hairline. "I deserve it," she said. "You deserve help," I said, and surprised us both. "But I'm not the one who can give it to you anymore." People talk about rage like it's a thunderclap. Mine was a tide. It went out slowly, left shells and the occasional broken glass, and came back with a shape I could predict. After the paperwork started making its square corners, I slept better. I fixed a latch for a woman who cried when her front door shut properly for the first time in a year. I helped an older man carry groceries to his car and learned the names of the birds that haunt the lake. I did not forgive Sophie. I forgave the version of myself who thought forgiveness could be scheduled. Dylan quit the gym 3 weeks later. There are only so many jokes a man can clean off a door frame before he starts looking for a city where door frames are taller and neighbors mind their own business. Someone said he moved to Arizona. Someone else said he stayed in town and changed his name from Dylan to something equally syllabled. When I pass the roof, I don't count mats anymore. The divorce mercifully avoided a courtroom. We split the furniture like practical strangers, and the money like people who hadn't tried hard enough to save any. Sophie kept the apartment because her office is 3 blocks closer. I took a place nearer to the marina with a smaller kitchen and a better view of nothing important. On move-in day, the neighbor downstairs brought me a pie and the instruction manual for the washer, as if the two were related. There was one thing, though, one twist I did not predict. On a Sunday morning in September, a detective knocked on my door with a face his mother probably worried about. He asked me questions in patient circles about a list of names and a network of people who used hotels incorrectly. He used words like solicitation and fraud, and I realized that Dylan was not Sophie's only mirror. I realized that the silver tube was an accessory in a larger uniform. I gave the detective my phone logs. I gave him what I'd printed the night I sat up waiting for sirens. I handed over a copy of the building's visitor sign-in sheets, the ones that used to make me oddly proud of our popularity. He thanked me. He did not say justice would be swift. He said justice would be steady, which is better. Sophie called me once after that and left a message that sounded like a map drawn by someone who declined to learn scale. She told me she was seeing someone who specializes in teaching people which of their choices aren't choices at all. She apologized for the 5th time in a way that made me believe the first 4 had been practice. She asked if we could meet at the lake. I didn't call back. Middle of all this, I realized I hadn't done the one thing every narrator eventually remembers how to do: ask the room to talk back. If you've walked this far with me, tell me what you would have done when the tube appeared and the sirens sang. Would you have confronted, forgiven, or folded your life into a car and driven until the map ran out? Leave your thoughts where words can help someone else recognize themselves. People don't heal on a schedule, but a story can keep them company while they try. Winter came like a contract that forgot to include a sunset clause. The lake roughened, and the elevator in my new building made a noise I learned to love. I started taking the long way home past the bakery that burns sugar on purpose and the bench that remembers more confessions than it keeps. Sometimes I saw Sophie turning a corner in a stranger's coat. Sometimes I didn't. A year after the ambulance, the building board finally replaced the community bulletin with a digital screen that scrolls more politely. The day they installed it, I wrote a note on an index card anyway and slid it under a magnet on my own fridge. Mercy is not forgetting. Mercy is remembering without needing to own the ending. I haven't started dating. That sentence used to embarrass me. It doesn't anymore. I am learning how to be good company for myself. I am learning to drink coffee while it is still hot. I am learning that Sundays do not require anyone else's schedule to qualify as a day. On a Tuesday that could have been a Thursday, I ran into Elaine at the farmer's market. She touched my arm in the careful way people touch the past when it surprises them. "You look well," she said, and I knew she meant I looked uninjured. "Sophie's working on things." "I hope so," I said, and meant it enough to carry me to the apples. Sometimes when the wind is in the wrong mood, the lake roars like an animal that refuses to be domesticated. I sit on a bench that doesn't owe me anything and watch the water try to climb out of its own body. I think about vows I didn't make and a future that learned to arrive without an RSVP. I don't miss Sophie the way I expected to. I miss the part of me who believed a calendar could keep people honest. Last week, a package arrived without a return address. Inside, a silver tube, unopened, heavy with the knowledge of what it might be. No note, no explanation. I stood at the sink with it in my hand and waited for rage or laughter or the need to find a detective who owed me a favor. None of those came. I dropped it in the trash and took the trash out, and the world did not make a sound. There is a photograph on my dresser. Me at 29 with grease on my cheek, smiling into a camera held by someone who knew how to make me feel taller. I keep it there. Not because it was better then, but because it reminds me that men are allowed to start over without permission slips. I am not a hero. I am a person who learned how to let a door close and then fix the latch so it stays closed. Tonight the marina smells like old rope and new rain. A boy practices throwing a football at no one and catches it anyway. His father claps once, proud of work he didn't do. A gull drops a mussel and loses the race to a second gull whose only skill is timing. I laugh quietly. Timing is most of it. Before I go, if this story found you on a day when your house learned a new kind of quiet, know this: you're not alone. Tell me what you would have done and where you think mercy ends. I read what you write when the building sleeps and the lake finally admits it's tired. If you want to hear the next story without the algorithm forgetting to invite you, stay close, like, subscribe, and bring your coffee. I'll bring the truth dressed up as company.